99 Jesus. 99 Jesus.
All right. Welcome to the 99 Hustles podcast. I'm your host, Nick Carter.
And I'm your co-host, International Fees.
And today we're joined by another exceptional guest. We have Alan Lazaros in the building. Alan, how's it going, man?
It's going awesome. I can tell you guys take this very seriously. And I'm super excited because I've been on a lot of podcasts and not everyone does take their platform as seriously as you guys, to be quite frank. And so I'm super pumped for whatever this interview brings.
Well, when Alan's not giving incredible compliments, he's also the host of Next Level You, which is a global top 100 self-improvement podcast. And when he's not dominating the podcast space, Alan's also a business coach and consultant over at his business or his company, Next Level Business Solutions. But, you know, what makes Alan special and why we were so excited to have him be a guest on our show is less about what he does and more about how he does it. So Alan, to kind of give us, audience, a peek behind the covers here, how do you tell us a little bit about, your start, where you're from, and how you came to the position you're in now?
So grew up in a very small town of Uxbridge, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so I grew up in New England. And my story starts, I'll try to give you the short version, but again, I'm 32 years old, so there's a lot to unpack here. When I was 2 years old, I had something really challenging happen to me. So my father passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old, and I'm 2 at the time.
Wow.
So I was raised by 2 women. My older sister's 3 years older. She was 6 at the time, 2.5 years older, and my mom. And it's interesting because I look back and reread the book of my life, and I do understand it far better than I did back then. But one thing I will say is adversity was definitely not a stranger to me. Growing up, I had a stepdad from when I was 2, basically 3 to 14. And I remember when I was 7 years old, my mom gave me this one lesson. And it's interesting because I know you're going to ask me my mantra later on, and this will be the same thing. So I'll start and end with the same real lesson here, which is my mom taught me this one lesson. And the older and older and older I get, I realize that this is the one. This is the one. This is the mantra. And so basically she said, Alan, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer, and I'm going to love you either way.
Wow.
Okay. She said, if you're a CEO and you aim high, though, you can wake up one day and just decide to farm, but it doesn't necessarily work the other way around. Guys, one time I told that story and I had someone reach out. My aunt's a farmer. They work so hard. Like, they got all mad at me. I'm like, it was my mom trying to explain it to a 7-year-old. Yeah. So if there's any farmers out there, I apologize.
Yeah.
But
this is not a shot at farming. We love our farmers.
No shots fired at all.
No shots fired at farmers. But basically what she taught me was aim high and you'll have choices. Life is about choices. And I could not agree more. And so she took a chance on me. 8th grade comes around, and up to this point, my mom didn't really do so well in academics. And so when my father passed away, she didn't have a lot of choices in terms of her career. And she always wished that her parents had pushed her to do academics more. So she really wanted me to be good at academics. So I'm getting A's and B's. Honestly, I'm getting mostly A's at this point. And it's 8th grade. And she says, Alan, I'm going to take a chance on you. Alan, I'm going to let you take 8th grade off. Now, by law, I still had to go to school. But what she meant was like, don't worry about grades. Just have fun, basically. As long as you promise me to get the President's Award in high school. Now, the President's Award in high school means you need a 95 or above GPA for every report card all through high school. We had 4 report cards a year, 4 years in high school. So that's 16 report cards straight without a single B. I did get 1 B+ in honors English. It was an 89, and I never took honors again in terms of English because I was more of a math guy. But she took that chance on me. So if you saw my academic career, you'd see all A's, maybe a couple B's. Then you'd see 8th grade C's, D's, and B's, no A's. And then in high school, you'd see straight A's. I was the obnoxious guy at the award ceremony, like just never sat down, right? That everyone like disliked, right? No, I'm just joking. But okay, fast forward. There's a little part of the story I haven't told you yet. I'm in Worcester, Massachusetts right now. There's a school called WPI. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's kind of like a mini MIT tech school, engineering school.
Okay.
At the time, my uncle Merle was the track and field coach there. And my mom, again, she said, Alan, you're great at math. You should be an engineer. Engineers make a lot of money. Engineers have a lot of choices. And we were driving past, I remember it, the sign at the bottom of the hill, that's what we call it. And she basically said, like, you should go there one day. And I didn't know it at the time, but my mom was always planting these seeds, these dreams in my heart as a little kid. And I was like 10 at that point. So fast forward, I graduate high school with the President's Award. I got straight A's, awesome. 95 or above GPA. We're doing my college essay to get into WPI. I get in, I do electrical and computer engineering. Absolutely brutal. Went from small town, big fish, small pond to like, oh my God, smartest people on the planet. I suck, right? And I failed my first ECE course, actually.
Wow.
Stuck with it. Perseverance has always been a thing for me. Got around the smartest people I could, all-nighters, you name it. Ended up graduating with high distinction with my electrical and computer engineering degree. Went into work for a company called Tyco Safety Products. And basically, I was behind a desk designing circuits. Realized really quickly, Alan, you're an extrovert. You love people. You love communicating. Like, you're not going to sit here alone behind a desk the rest of your life. So what are we going to do? My hero in college was Steve Jobs. I saw his 2005 Stanford address. I fell in love.
Wait, hold on, Alan. I don't mean to cut you off.
What's happening, man? What do we got? Walter Isaacson? Oh,
you
yeah.
already know.
Oh, yeah. Of course I do. Of course I do. Come on, man. The 2005 Stanford address is the best speech of all time. Best speech of all time. Like, hands down. And for anyone who studies oratory, I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I saw that. I was in class. It was actually an economics class, which is fascinating. And I literally was like, yeah, I'm done with this. And I like left class because I just needed to change my life after that. Started a little company called Campus Libre with some of my roommates. And at this point, I actually looked this up. And again, aim high, you'll have choices. My goal back then was to be a Fortune 50 CEO like Steve Jobs. And I looked it up, and apparently something like 65+% of CEOs in America had an engineering undergrad.
Interesting.
With an MBA. So what did I do? I went back for my MBA. Boom. Got it. Awesome. Went into corporate. I mean, I did job hopping. I went to LA for a time. I lived in LA for 3 months. I worked for a company called Oz Development. I worked for iRobot for a time. I worked at a company called Cognex eventually, and there was a few more in there. But eventually I landed at this company called Cognex. I started an inside sales team for industrial automation in Natick, Massachusetts. And then eventually I get promoted to outside sales. At this point, I'm managing all of basically Western New England, Vermont, Western Mass, and Connecticut are my territory. I'm making well over 6 figures at this point. I'm in my early 20s, beautiful girlfriend, tons of friends, corporate friends, college friends, high school friends, definitely partied more than I probably should have. For sure. Yeah, exactly. And now this is where the turning point was for me. I'm up in New Hampshire, my little cousin. We were playing Call of Duty, and it's Friday night. We go to TGI Fridays to get some food, and we're on the way. 2016 snowbanks are up past the signs. Horrible winter, like such a horrible winter. I thought the road stayed right. It actually stayed left. I looked down for the GPS, up at the road, brightest lights I'd ever seen. I thought it was a Mack truck, honestly. Turns out it was a lift kitted pickup truck. Again, New Hampshire. And I remember thinking to myself, like, and again, if anyone's had a life or death situation, they'll understand this. It wasn't like this might be it. It was like, this is it. That's it. Like that moment of like, this is the end.
Wow.
Fortunately, I'm driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat. I used to call it the tank because I wanted to get out of debt. So I bought a cheap car. I was in 84 grand worth of debt after school, and I paid it all off in 1 year, which is awesome. But nice. I had this really cheap old German engineered car, a Passat. Thank goodness I did. I used to call it the tank. It was like a steel trap. Both airbags did deploy. Cousin hurt his knee. I hurt my face in the airbag, and we're okay somehow. In my speeches, I actually show the picture of my car because I've seen the picture of my dad's car. Okay, my dad's 28, and I grew up my whole life hearing stories about my dad, John.
Oh, man, that's crazy.
I'm 26 at the time, and my car is absolutely total. Yeah.
Full circle. Wow.
You're 26. You were 2 when he passed.
Yep.
Like all these things are like playing in the back of your head. Like, is this all some sort of like connected thing here that I'm just not I'm tapping into?
I actually just got the chills just talking about this. And it's interesting because and this is what it is. My dad didn't have a second chance.
Mm.
And I did. So I'm in an armchair drinking whiskey at my cousin's place up in New Hampshire, totaled my car. I am so rattled, guys. Like not just physically rattled, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually rattled. Like regret on regret on regret. And I wasn't a bad dude, but I definitely was not proud of the man that I became and the difference that I made. There was two questions that were rolling through my mind. I could not get these out of my head. One of them was, how much did I courageously fight for what I believe in? And how fiercely did I love? For some reason, those are the two that really mattered to me most. Now, I live by this quote now. You can't see the stars during the day. They're always there, but sometimes it takes the darkness to see clearly that which you simply could not within the light.
Bars. That was nice. I like that.
And
for
so,
a guy who didn't like English class, you do a pretty good job of putting words.
Yeah, you got some rhymes.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Yeah. I started really enjoying English after 26. So up to 26, I didn't read many books. Now I've read hundreds, if not thousands, honestly, at this point. So I appreciate you guys. But so if you're out there listening right now, there's a couple guarantees. One, emotional pain is in your future. Adversity is in your future. It's a guarantee. There's no one on this planet who hasn't had adversity. Some degrees, some are more, some are less. And even if you haven't, that's actually your adversity because you can't relate to anybody, right? These are like the spoiled kids, right? And to be completely honest with you guys, I grew up in some serious challenges beyond what I even want to publicly talk about. But what I will say is that all of you, us three included, anyone listening, there is adversity in your future. See, adversity is a guarantee. What you do about it, what choices you make when you're in the dark, that's what's gonna be what changes everything. And so for me, I saw two stars in the dark that I couldn't see during the light. One was Tony Robbins' TED Talk. Fire. I mean, fire TED Talk. Whether you like Tony or not, the TED Talk's unreal. Okay. Number two, a woman named Bronnie Ware from Australia. I've since interviewed her on the show, which is huge, is awesome. But basically she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Okay. Basically she worked in hospice for 8 years with the terminally ill, 8 years taking care of the terminally ill. And she heard all these common patterns of, I wish, I wish, I wish. And she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. The number one regret of the dying is, I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. And so ever since I first read that book, I've had a flashcard in my pocket since then. I'll be honest with you guys, it's actually right over there with my keys and wallet and such. It's not in my pocket right now, but it's got all 5 regrets on it. And that number one, that was the one that was me. Like, I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not what others expected of me.
Yeah.
Because I was definitely doing what society thought was success and what I thought was success, but not necessarily following that inner compass. Go ahead, man.
The fact that you that connection there, because you're a Steve Jobs fan as well. Steve has inspired me tremendously. What that makes me think about is, like, I think on his deathbed, like his final message for the world was like, actualize yourself.
Right.
Not necessarily. I think it was like at his funeral. Like he gave everyone who attended his funeral a book, and it was like a message with it that said, actualize yourself. So that's kind of what I think about there when you say that, like, about not living your life to your full, because that's why we're here, right? That's why we're here, is to truly ignore the noise. And, you know, we're in a generation now where there's more noise than ever. You have Twitter, you're getting pulled in so many different directions, and it becomes increasingly difficult to listen to your heart, listen to your gut, listen to that little voice and that intuition that we all have. So I do think that's very important. I like that a lot. Alan, one question I do want to like, you mentioned the struggle, and that choices is what determines us. But like, what did you do to get yourself mentally out of this, you know, these types of challenges or mind states? Like, how did you, you know, were you writing every day for affirmations? Were you, you know, exercising maybe to keep your spirits up? Like, how did you yourself handle the adversity and make that switch to the next level?
All of the above, but I would say there's a couple things that really really changed my life. One, this understanding of personal development, and that if I, instead of chasing these external results, if I work on me physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then I can attract those results. Because at the end of the day, my regrets weren't like, oh, I was a horrible person, I lived a horrible life. No, I had a wonderful life and I had a lot of fun, but I had a pleasure-centered paradigm. And if you've ever read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, by the way, Nick, I don't know if you know, but your video just went out.
Yeah, I think he's practicing this new filter where he just disappears in the middle.
Perfect. All right, awesome. Excellent. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Okay. So I didn't realize this, but basically I had a pleasure-centered paradigm. And if you've ever read Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, excellent book. Yes. He talks about all the different paradigms. Some people are family-centered. Some people are work-centered. Some people are money-centered. I didn't realize this, but I inherited a pleasure-centered paradigm. And again, I can connect the dots looking back. I can see clearly now that I grew up in a pleasure-centered paradigm, and I just shifted that. So there's a lot of ways I could answer your question, Nick, which is like, yeah, I went all in on fitness. Yeah, I went all in on personal development. Yeah, I changed my associations. Yeah, I started reading books. Yeah, I started staying in solitude and listening to that voice, instead of all the distractions and the noise. But what really shifted, and this is, again, only in hindsight, is I traded in a pleasure-centered paradigm that I didn't know I had and a goal-oriented paradigm to basically a fulfillment-centered paradigm, a principle-centered paradigm. See, after that, I was like, I'm never again going to follow the quote-unquote rule book or guidelines of someone else. I can learn from other people. I can model certain strategies, but I'm never again gonna ignore this. Not just my heart, not just my mind, but my soul as well, and that's the thing that adversity will do, especially emotional adversity. When you're in emotional pain and mental pain and physical pain, you tend to like really contemplate your life. And that's when you finally eliminate the noise and really hear that inner voice and that calling, that destiny. And I just went kind of all in on that, but I quit drinking. I started lifting, and that's one thing I'll give for your listeners practically beyond just all this esoteric stuff. I traded fitness. Imagine like alcohol and drinking was like a pretty big part of my life. Like I partied, I had fun. I was in a fraternity, college, high school, all that stuff. And I'll be honest about that. I traded in alcohol, got rid of it, and I added fitness. And I think I Miyagi'd myself because it's like, okay, well, now I care so much about fitness and my physique, and I started competing. I was a fitness model, and I, was a fitness coach, all this stuff. I went all in on fitness. And what's the worst thing for fitness? Like alcohol. So it took me, I often talk about how it took me 5 years to quit drinking because I was off and on. Now I'm over 3 years now. Nice. Completely sober because I was poisoning my mind. And Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah. But it's interesting because
now was alcohol before you move on, was alcohol like something it wasn't just a social thing for you, it was more so like a regular part of your existence, whether that's again, you were a successful person, you have you had, it wasn't like you were missing out on social like the social lifestyle, things of that nature. You were in a fraternity, you had plenty of friends or people or associates. What was alcohol like? Some sort of like hidden, like was this like hiding who you truly are or what you were thinking, or was it like diluting what you live in now, which is your truth? Like was that kind of like a suppressant?
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't know this at the time, but looking back, it's clear to me. I'm a pretty aspirational guy, and I don't self-belief. It's interesting. I heard one time. My girlfriend's a podcaster as well. She has a podcast called the Why Power Podcast. Why Power? I always want to really enunciate with that, by the way, because people think that I'm saying something different. But her, it's basically, why do you do what you do? Again, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But her business partner, co-host of the podcast, is actually a client of mine and has been for a long time. And she said, like, if you're out there right now and someone tells you they don't struggle with self-belief and they don't struggle with self-confidence, like they're lying to you. And I remember when I heard that, I was like, I don't struggle with self-belief. I never really have.
That's dope.
Appreciate you, brother. But what I do struggle with is self-worth. And I didn't realize the difference. My girlfriend illuminated this for me. She's like, Alan, self-worth is different than self-belief. And I'm like, interesting. I never really thought about it. Because self-belief is, I believe in my own ability to achieve anything I set my mind to, given enough time, given enough consistency, right? And I've always had that, genuinely. And that's why I've always had big dreams. No matter how hard the now was or how hard the past was, the future was always bright for me, guys. It still is. Still is. I don't know how to explain it. It is what it is. But self-worth is different. Self-worth is, imagine you invest all this money in a beautiful home and you renovate the kitchen and you landscape and then you throw frat parties and you let people spill beer all over your room. It's like you let people treat you like shit because you have low self-worth. And so to answer your original question, in hindsight, I realized I was trying to belong because, to be honest with you guys, I've always had high self-belief and I do think a very high degree of intelligence. And I think that alcohol made me less and it made me feel like I belong. And I was more fun. I mean, I think that people
so you could actually connect with people better.
I've heard that before.
Like, this is what you guys do. This is how we are able to connect with each other. I'm smart enough to realize that this is the best way to connect with you is let's drink.
It wasn't conscious. And you know what it does, guys? I'm a very future oriented person. It's not everyone who has a Steve Jobs quote of only those who are crazy enough to change the world, to think they can change the world, are the ones who do. Like, I have that on my wall. That's been a quote I've been living by since I was very young. That's very weird, right? And so I grew up in a small town. I have always been very future oriented, like big vision type of person. And what alcohol did is it took it away. Guys, when I drank alcohol, all that mattered was now. And to me, learn from the past, enjoy the present, but focus on building a brighter future. I'm much more on the future orientation. I mean, I know a lot of people like Eckhart and the power of now and all that. I don't agree at all. I don't. If you don't plan your future and build toward a future, your future is not going to be bright. So I'm very much on the high end of like future orientation is good, but that prefrontal cortex part that was so overdeveloped from a very young age, that mathematical engineer, reverse engineer everything type of thinker, it didn't fit in. It didn't belong in my environment. And so what I did is I shut that off with alcohol. And I didn't realize why I was doing it, but the real reason I was doing it was low self-worth and wanting to be loved. And that's just the truth.
Interesting.
Now, does that come from like your growing up experience? I mean, I know you mentioned, you grew up and you lost your father at 2. So you're living in a household that's, not the quote unquote normal upbringing. So like, was that level of trying to belong, does that stem from there? Like from just, your experiences?
I'm sure that some part of me, well, let me explain this with a framework. Kevin's always like, dude, not everyone wants frameworks, but I have a framework, the self-belief and self-worth thing. And I just created this. It's called the 4 types. And type 1 has high self-belief, low self-worth. Those are the achievers. That's me. That was me. The ones who have to achieve to feel worthy. And I do think that the upbringing I had contributed to my low self-worth for sure.
I'm like that.
Go ahead. Yeah. Amen, brother. Okay. Type 2 is basically people that have really high self-worth, but low self-belief, but they cloak it. They mask it. They pretend to have high self-belief. So imagine someone in your high school, everyone listening, who like put in like very little effort, didn't really have any merit, like wasn't very smart, like didn't work that hard, but yet thought the world of themselves. Right? They have like very little results, but they just think they're awesome. That's a type 2, basically high self-worth, but it's kind of fake because deep down, they're insecure about the fact that they don't believe in themselves. Okay. So that's type 2. Type 3 is the victims. These are the people that have low self-belief and low self-worth. These are the people that the type 2s find and usually stay with. And by the way, type 2 are the types who, when they get around a type 1 like you, Nick, they actually try to make you less than so that they don't feel insecure and bad. It's your big dreams. You can't talk to them, but it's like, that's never going to work. You're crazy, man. Right. And by the way, the type 1 has low self-worth because they don't belong, why don't they belong? Very few people have self-belief. So you try to talk about your aspirations. I mean, I remember I was talking to my buddy at the table. We were like 12 years old. His name's Keith Corton. My name's Alan Lazaros. We were going to start a company called Lazcore. And it was going to be Musket, the American Revolution. It was going to be a video game company that made a series of video games.
Ambitious.
Yeah, right. So the movie The Patriot, imagine that, but in video game format, first person shooter, but also cannons and all that. And my mom was just putting wind into the sails of this. Like, yeah, like Lazcore. So that aspiration piece is so rare that it makes you feel weird. And so you have low self-worth inherently because you don't know where your people are. It's like, am I the only one who's like this? Like, what's wrong with me? Right.
Yeah.
And then the type 2s try to tell you that you're the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the narcissists, whatever it is, what it is. Type 3 are the victims. There's a fourth type. And I finally figured this out thanks to my beautiful girlfriend, Emilia, who got me to realize major breakthrough. Self-belief and self-worth are different, Alan. Which in hindsight is pretty simple and pretty obvious.
There's an interesting clip I want our audience to pull up. Fees, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a clip like people YouTube Diddy self-belief. And there's this interview, right, where like some guy's talking to Diddy and he's like, tell me about a time where like you had self-doubt. And it's the most awkward thing in the world because like he sits there and stares at the camera for like 10 seconds, like, I don't even know what self-doubt is. He's so confused about like what self-doubt. That's kind of what you reminded me of a little bit, Al. You said something. You were like, "Yo, like I had to like, what is self-belief and like what is like you didn't even recognize it because you always had that confidence in yourself." Like I definitely think that's an admirable quality, man.
But it's an important distinction because like, you know, like he said, he was doing a lot of these things and achieving a lot of these goals that either he set out for himself or somebody set out for him. Yeah. And yet it wasn't really fulfilling, you know? So it's like people like that, or, you know, the people like your old self, Alan, just continue to, you know, succeed and continue to do things, continue to like every day it's a new task and it's always you're just task to the point where like you're almost insufferable because you're like, what is your life really beyond just finding new things to try and tackle?
Well, that brings me to type 4. Type 4 has high self-belief and high self-worth. And their self-worth is not predicated on achievement. Right. And so my mission in life has become find the type 3s who are victims, inject self-belief, they become type 1s, and then grow into type 4s through deeper understanding, through consistency, through action, through community, all that stuff. But it's interesting. And most of them are just, if you think about it, and again, I coach people from Australia and Italy all over, and it's awesome. And because I get so many different perspectives, but there's certain common patterns that are just so obvious. And one of them is when you get the type 2s out of your life, you start to flourish.
Oh, interesting.
You just start to flourish. And that's what happened to me too. I started finally, I remember I left my ex-girlfriend. I left one of my business partners. I started really like, I remember one of my buddies, new friend of mine, fitness coach. He said, you want to know what your problem is? That guy.
Interesting.
And after I started realizing like, oh, okay. And again, for your listeners, just to make this valuable, 3 columns. First column, people who sincerely want to proactively see you succeed. That's going to be a short list if you're honest with yourself. Okay. Second column, people who are apathetic. They love you and they don't really care if you win or not. I can think of a friend like never really like, yeah, Alan, you got this, but also like doesn't really like not taking wind out of my sails either. He's not like kind of
they're not disliking your videos.
Exactly. Yeah, literally.
Good job, Greg. I mean, Alan.
Exactly.
You care about me?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, but if you start winning, they're like, "Yo, my boy Alan."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's global. You know, he's going global. I know him. We grew up together, right? Yeah, but I could never tell him he's awesome, though. I brag to him to my friends, but I will never compliment him. No, those are the apathetic. They don't really. They love you for you, not for your aspiration. Right. What they don't realize is your aspiration is very much part of who you are.
Part of you.
It's a whole nother thing. The third one. This is the one you gotta identify and rectify, guys. Third column. People whose subconscious insecurity want to see you fail. Subconscious insecurity is the bugs in the garden.
The gaslighters.
If you plant a garden, okay, and it's summer, and you don't defend the garden will be gone. The bugs and the weeds will take it. It's a fact. All value must be defended. Go ahead, brother.
I got one for you, Alan. You got us somewhere. So this is like we're getting really deep and philosophical. We love this.
Okay.
So
perfect.
let me I got a question for you. So what if can it ever be like as opposed to that external person, like can that be yourself? Like do you think that somebody could subconsciously want themselves to fail because they don't believe that, they don't believe they deserve to win. So, you think subconscious self-sabotage sometimes happens with, different entrepreneurs you talk to?
All the time. I think that we're all driven by fear, unfortunately, more than aspiration, unless we're super well developed. I think most greatness stems from insecurity and adversity. And here's the answer to your question. I think that what originally drives us is either a fear of failure or a fear of success. So it's obvious from a young age, I was drinking subconsciously because I was afraid to succeed, because I knew if I succeeded, I would have to say goodbye to most of the people that I currently love. And the truth of the matter is that I did. I genuinely did. I saw one of my friends from home last night leaving the gym. And I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't even go over and talk to him because I didn't have the time to have an hour-long unpack of all the catch up. And it hurt my heart. But at the same time, my mind and my aspiration was like, that was a good play because you're on the mic with David Meltzer at 8 a.m. the next day. That's
maturity.
Appreciate you, man. But it hurts my heart. And to pretend that it doesn't, that's ignorance. So some people are afraid to succeed. Those are the people, by the way, type 1, high self-belief, low self-worth, afraid to succeed because they want to belong. And instead of allowing themselves to be a lighthouse and guide the ships in, they're trying to go out and save the ships. And by the way, they think everyone else has self-belief. Like Diddy, he's probably like, everybody's got self-belief, right? No idea, right? It's like everybody's Kobe, everybody's like Michael Jordan, right? Tom Brady.
And then that's why they're oftentimes the worst kind of like coaches or the worst kind of teachers of certain skill sets, because they don't understand how you don't understand. You're like, how do you not believe in yourself? What do you mean? And what do you do every day? How do you do anything if you don't have any level of self-worth or just self-belief? Now, Nick, you kind of touched on it a little bit about like that voice within sometimes that kind of says the opposite of what Alan was saying earlier about, drowning out the noise and kind of listening to that inner self in terms of how you live your life and what you should be doing. But I kind of wanted to bridge both of those things together. How do you know what is, your true subconscious and what's just the actual doubt? How do you, make sure you're listening to the right things within?
Your question makes me realize how philosophical, how deep of a thinker you are. So I appreciate the question. I think that a lot of your fear is masking itself as intuition. And I think that that's true for all of us. And it's scarcity versus abundance. It's faith versus fear. There's a million ways to frame it, right? But just watch out for the wolf in sheep's clothing, not only with the type 2s, but the type 2s within yourself. Because remember, every single movie, right? It all inspires. I'm a big movie lover, and I use Titanic because most people know of it. It's like there's 4 characters in every movie, and there's 4 characters in every single one of us, and there's 4 characters in every one of our lives. You've got type 1, which is the hero of your own story. Self-belief, low self-worth, trying to find self-worth in their journey. Type 2.
You're describing superheroes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. My very first YouTube video.
That's Batman.
Called Real Life Superheroes. Yeah, exactly. Very first YouTube video of all time. It's like a little kid looking in comparison with a big dream. Terrible. Still on YouTube if you want to watch it. It's awful. Everybody sucks at first, right? Okay, so first one is type 1, the hero. So in Titanic, Kate Winslet's character. But here's the thing. At the beginning, she's the victim. Low self-belief, low self-worth. Her mom's like, society doesn't want women to succeed. Cal is the villain. He's the one who thinks the world of himself, even though he was obviously a trust fund baby who got everything given to him. He's like, Picasso won't amount to a thing, blah, blah, blah. Like he treats Rose like shit in private, but yet in public, he pretends to be this great guy, right? So the type 1s are the heroes. The type 2s are the villains. The type 3s are the victims. No self-belief, no self-worth, but they can be built. See, self-esteem is the short-term version of self-worth, and it can be built by keeping the promises you make to yourself. but you don't make promises to yourself if you don't have self-belief.
Poetry snaps, man. Poetry snaps. That's deep. That's deep. I like that. I like that.
I like you guys. You guys are increasing my self-worth. No.
You can't increase what you already have, my brother.
I appreciate
There you
you. The self-worth I'm working on, self-belief I've got. So type 3, the victim. So every story has a villain, a victim, a hero, and there's the fourth and the most important one. And I've finally understood this, the guide. I don't care if it's Obi-Wan Kenobi or if it's Leonardo DiCaprio at the back of the boat when the victim is considering taking her own life. And he says, no, don't. You ever been to Wisconsin? It's really cold. Don't do it. You're not just going to die. It's going to be painful, right? So we all have been all four. There are times when my ego made me the villain and I was resentful and I was mean and I raised my voice, whatever. There are times when I was the hero of my own story. And there were times when I allowed myself to be a victim of my own circumstances. But now in this phase of my life, 32 years in, I finally understand that I can be a guide. And the reason I can be a guide is because I've been the hero of my own story for so long. And again, this is a process that keeps repeating. We still have villains within ourselves, right? So we have to identify the villains, the ego, the I'm not good enough, the wanting to tear others down so that you feel better about yourself. We all have that in us. And to ignore that or deny that is naive. And it's also not human.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it sounds good to be like, oh, you know, this specific quality it's always other people. But oftentimes I feel like that same quality where you're trying to bring others down, if used in the right way, is what drives you to outcompete your other people. You know, what causes you to treat people as like, or treat things as competition. And you look at people like, oh, it's never really personal. You don't really personally dislike them. But if it's you or this person that's going to be the starting point guard on this team, you're going to do everything you can to make sure you beat them. Right. So it's like, I oftentimes find those two, the yin and the yang of that is like, it's like, how do you find the balance? And I think that's at the end of the day, like all these different, types, at the end of the day, there's the ones that usually are, I guess, happy or internally at peace are the ones that found that balance
or wholeness. It's like
right.
That dark side that you just articulated that we all have, some people have learned how to get to know it and use it for good. And then there's other people who pretend not to have it. And that's actually when the dark side starts to take the garden.
I realized what you just said. I realized that watching Last Dance. The Last Dance documentary, Michael Jordan. Yeah. It was like Jordan just had this way to turn his dark side into like championships, right? Yeah. Like every time he took something personal or he got angry, he was able to channel that dark energy into something beautiful and something historic. So
Nick, I want to add value to your life. Have you watched the Hall of Fame speech?
Michael
Jordan's?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where the crying phase originated.
Okay. Right? Yeah. Okay. Just because he's still got that fire.
Oh yeah. He like right off the list.
Yeah, he's still going.
He invited the guy who beat him out on the varsity team in high school. Like,
yeah.
Let the poor man live. It wasn't his fault. Like,
literally. But that's someone in touch with their greatest potential because they understand that dark side. Now, I will be honest, and I love Michael, but like I do think that, and again, we could talk about this all day, but I think Kobe was more in control of his dark side than Michael was because he learned from Michael. And I think the important part is for all of us to understand that we do. I used to have this saying that I said a long time ago. It's like we all have these rabid dogs in our basement. And if you don't let them out every now and then and let them run free a little bit, then they'll get out and do something unsavory. You can't suppress every part of your nature all the time. What you can do is get to know it. And there's something called IFS, emotive family therapy or something like that, IFT. And it's basically, it was described this way. We all have protectors and we have exiles. And whenever we start to get to know our exile, which is like a beach ball underwater, holding it underwater, hiding it from ourselves and from others, this is usually big, deep trauma. Maybe you were beaten or abused, or maybe you did abuse to someone else or whatever. You exile this thing, skeleton in your closet, and you have a protector. For some people, it's humor. For some people, it's ego. For some people, it's shell up, right? Some people are puffer fish. They'll like puffer fish. And then other people will shell up, turtle shell.
Yeah.
And so what I've tried to do in my personal development since 26 is like review my life and really find these exiles and like let the beach ball come up. Because if you try to hold it, how long can you hold that beach ball down? You wonder why you're tired all day. It's like all day, every day, you're trying to hide these skeletons, trying to pretend you're perfect. It's all just ego. And you got to let it up. If you don't let it up, it'll get out and splash somebody eventually. Right. And we see that countless with all these like famous people, and like their beach balls are all splashing everybody. Right. Way later. It's like,
and they end up hurting themselves and the people they actually do care about the most.
Care about.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it's our responsibility to identify those exiles, try to get to know them in a proactive solitude way. And I'm still doing that. I mean, I did a thing with my girlfriend last night where I cut some ties spiritually, proverbially, metaphorically with so much of my past, because I want to heal and I want to forgive. And I do, guys, I can sense some of the people that I grew up with in my hometown. As Kevin and I become more and more successful, I can literally intuitively feel the sadness, because a lot of these people feel left behind, and I can feel it.
Survivor's guilt. Yeah.
And I'm trying to release that. But I can feel the sadness. A lot of my friends are still in the same town, and I'm in the same geographic location too, but I'm in a different place spiritually and success wise. And I'm in my calling, and a lot of people are very unfulfilled. So I can feel that. And I'm trying to do my best to be a guide. Yeah, go ahead.
Alan, how do you know when you're in your calling? You said that very like sure, very just confident, matter of fact way. I'm in my calling. How does somebody know that they're in their calling, or if they're not in their calling?
Fulfillment. Yeah, fulfillment is the soul's recognition of alignment with its highest self. And so if I'm unfulfilled, I'm not in my calling. This conversation, I'm in my calling right now. And I can tell because I'm fulfilled. This is awesome.
Yeah. So I guess what
you're
I'm
getting
thinking,
you're not necessarily losing energy. You're more so gaining it.
I'm in flow. I'm in flow.
In the flow state. And so I guess, I guess when you reach that place of fulfillment, you kind of just know. Is that kind of what because if I never felt fulfillment, how do I necessarily know what feeling to chase? But so I guess what you're saying is when it comes, you'll know definitely.
Yeah. People used to say, so interesting. People used to say like, when you know, you'll know. Whenever I was like, how do you know when you're in love? Right. Like, how do you know when it's the one, the person? Right. Yeah. And people would say like, when you know, you'll know. And I used to think that was such crap. I was like, no, like, I don't get it. Right. Like you're just going to know. Like my math brain was like, When I met Emilia,
calculating.
I'm telling you, quick story. Yeah, literally. What's going on here? And does she check all the boxes? Right. So that's my prefrontal cortex trying to tell me what my intuition already knows. Quick story. So I have an assistant. Her name's Amy, and every Sunday we'd get together and do work towards the mission. And I remember I met Emilia on Instagram, and I finally had the courage to reach out and not unsend it. Right. And we talked, we connected. It was like, I don't know. You know how someone says she's my everything? Mm-hmm. I finally understand what that means. She's my best friend. She's my business coach. She's my gym partner. She's my lover. We have fun and we're playful, but yet we also get down, right? So it's like, she's my everything. And I never understood that. And the reason why is because I'd never experienced it. And so I went to Amy and I had just met Emilia. I had never even met her in person yet. We haven't even gone on our first date. We were just audioing back and forth a bunch. And Emilia's name had a little heart next to it in my contacts. And I'm, working with Amy. She saw my phone and she got all weird and there was a little disconnect. And I'm like, what is it? Is it because you saw the heart next to Emilia's name? She's like, I don't understand. You just met her. Not because she's jealous or has anything, like my assistant and I don't have anything, but she's just like, I don't get it. Like, how do you know? And I'm like, Amy, to be honest with you, like, I intend to be with her forever. I intend to be with her. I intend to marry her. And she's like, doesn't make any sense. 1 week later, we're doing Friendsgiving and you would have thought we were together for years.
Wow.
And it's wild because when you know, you'll know. It's that way with fulfillment too. It's like this. Okay. After this interview, I'm going to feel one of two things. I'm going to feel fulfillment, which means I was in my calling, or I'm going to feel a little bit of like regret or resentment for having wasted my time, quote unquote. And the reason why no one else can tell you what your calling is because they don't feel those feelings for you. That's your intuition saying, hey, emotions, give me the feeling of regret, give me the feeling of fulfillment so that you can tell me. But here's the problem. We mistake pleasure for fulfillment because everyone told us life's about happiness, but we never
Full
defined
circle.
it. Yeah,
Full circle back to your pleasure thing from earlier. Yep.
exactly. Yep.
And no one shows you that. Like you said, we never defined it. There's no in school how to find your calling class, like when there should be.
For
and
sure.
what happens is like I said, so much noise. It's like people don't take the time out to even listen to what they feel. Right. Everything you're describing is about internal scans and internal, like, what am I feeling? Like you just said, after this episode, you're going to feeling fulfilled or this. People don't take the time out to sit with those feelings. Like they go right into Instagram or, funny dances for TikTok.
TikTok's a dangerous game, fellas. You don't go down that rabbit hole. You know what
I refuse to open it.
Can't do it. Never downloaded it. I should because the organic reach is huge. Can't do it.
No.
My actually director of marketing is like, Alan, you need TikTok.
And
it's like,
so Alan, we do want to just go back a little bit. We went through your story and then we went into incredible nuggets and nuggets of value for other aspiring entrepreneurs or just for people living life. Behind you, Next Level University. Can you talk to us a little bit about starting that, arriving at that point, and what do you do at Next Level University?
Fire. So after 26, after the car accident, I went all in on personal development, and I really wanted to, like I said, help people understand and start designing a life on their own terms, like I had started doing. And so I was like, how am I going to do that? So I started a little company called Lazaros LLC, super original. And the tagline was exactly to your point before, what you'll never learn in school, but desperately, in all caps, need to know. It's like, okay, we use our bodies every day and we use money every day and we eat food every day and we're in relationships every day. And yet in school, we learned nothing about any of those things. It's like, I didn't take my first entrepreneurship class or finance course until my MBA. And it's like, I'm blessed. Like not a lot of people get there. Right. And these are really important things. So I just was like, what do you need to learn in school? What you'll never learn in school, but desperately need to know. Now, here's the problem. I was trying to have speeches at schools. And so like, they were like, yeah, no, we're not going to have you come in and talk about how we're not doing a good job.
You're going to come here
right?
and trash us in our home and place of employment.
Exactly, man.
Five
exactly.
students just dropped out.
And then you're going to pay me for that. Right.
Yeah.
With the money that you don't have. Right. So I started a podcast instead. Greatest idea ever. It was called Conversations Change Lives.
In the year? What year was this?
So the Hyperconscious podcast, 2017, early 2017.
So podcasting was like new still, right?
Unless you're Joe Rogan. But
unless
you're Joe Rogan. Yeah, nobody's catching that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's still very new. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because at the time it didn't really feel that new to me. But yeah, it is. It is.
Well, it's all because like in the echo chamber you were living in, like everyone has a podcast.
Yeah. And by the way, you guys probably see that now, right?
Yeah.
It's like everyone has a podcast. But if I took 1,000 random sample, it's like, how many podcasters? Yeah, go ahead.
Beyond podcasts, like just the conversations Nick and I have offline, just, our daily, friendship, we're talking about things like cryptocurrency, right? And we're like, man, like, oh, we're late, like this and that. And, oh, we should have got in, at this point in a year ago and yada, yada, yada. And then you go and look up the statistics and like maybe 20% of people actually even know what cryptocurrency is. Of that 20%, maybe like 10 are actually actively involved. So like the idea that we convinced ourselves that we're late to something,
it's ridiculous.
In the reality, we're early.
You guys in podcasting are very early. Guys, there's
the rules are still being written.
When I first started a podcast, there was only 250,000 podcasts. Then that was 500,000, a million. Now there's 2 million. And most people only get between 7 and 25 episodes. So you guys are already way past most.
Interesting.
And we absolutely. You guys are going to be awesome. You guys really take this seriously. It's clear. So it's obvious. And I've been on lots of shows, so I'm not just saying that. But basically, what was I saying? Oh, it's going to be 4 million within a year. And that's going to be 8 million. I mean, this industry's in its infancy.
Yeah.
It's in its infancy. This is the very beginning, guys. So just remember, never lose momentum on the train. Goal 1, start the train. Goal 2, keep momentum. Goal 3, see goal 1 and 2. Joe Rogan just the dude never stopped.
Yeah, every day.
You know what I mean? Every day.
Yeah.
The most prolific, most consistent. It doesn't market almost at all, right?
Right.
Doesn't, not good at marketing. Like, you're not going to go, hey, Joe Rogan, how do I market my podcast? He's like, I don't do it. You know, have snakes eating
Be
frogs
yourself.
on your
I don't
Instagram.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Talk to cool people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Post a snake eating a frog. It'll go
Yeah.
great.
Rogan's successful being
Yeah.
himself. He's
Oh
really,
my God.
I think
Yeah.
Rogan's really successful just being himself.
He's just himself. Like,
Completely
we actually
himself.
were just talking about Rogan, I don't know, a couple days ago maybe, and we were just saying how, like, you know, this guy just does what he actually enjoys doing. Like, he has a podcast, he does UFC like events like on his spare time.
Yeah.
Like,
Comedian.
guy he does stand-up comedy when he's not doing that. Like, he's living the thing, like his own truth in terms of like the things that he does. It's because he actually enjoys doing it. And that's kind of like the whole premise behind like why we started this podcast. And the idea was, you know, Nick and I had these conversations amongst ourselves or other friends. And every time we talk to other people about things, they're like, man, you guys should talk about this, like, or this, that, and the third. And we're like, who wants to hear us talk about anything?
Yeah.
Right. Like, we convinced ourselves at first that like, we don't have a perspective that, you know, warrants some sort of platform. But as we, you know, we just started it, and every person we spoke with, you know, in one way or the other, affirmed that like we were the only reason why we haven't did this, you know, years ago, or didn't believe in ourselves years ago to kind of step out of our own shells and, you know, take on something like this. So I appreciate you saying that.
You're welcome, man. And I'm grateful you guys did that, because believe it or not, I know we live in echo chambers of self-improvement, and I certainly do. Next Level You, everything around me is how to get to the next level. But most of the world is not living there. You know, the unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates, like, most people are living an unexamined life. And that's just the truth. I'm not trying to be negative. One thing I will say about Joe Rogan super quick, and then I'll go into how the podcast started, is he's a behind the scenes workhorse. That dude never stops, guys. And that's the thing, like, his consistency is unreasonably high.
Yeah.
And so I don't want anyone listening to think like, oh, I can get to the point where I can do anything I want. It's like, it's just like The Rock, right? They're in the land of do whatever you want. Fitness company and tequila. Doesn't make sense, but it's The Rock, right? And it's like, you don't get there until decades of consistency, right?
Right.
And Joe Rogan and The Rock are some of the hardest working humans on the planet. And they did it for decades before, you know, they were able to do whatever they wanted. But Conversations Change Lives, I started that. And then Kevin had me on his show, the Hyperconscious Podcast. I was the guest for 2 different episodes within the first 7 of them. And eventually it was like, dude, we should just team up. And so for a while, if you look at like episode 7 to like 17, it was literally an intro of welcome back to another very special episode of the Conversations Change Lives meets Hyperconscious Podcast. And it was like, eventually it was like, yo, we got to change that name.
We need to go under one flag.
Yeah, we got to go. And then eventually 400 episodes in, we came up with Next Level You, and we rebranded, because we're one of the only shows that I think has holistic self-improvement, health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and kind of financial if you want. But that's the next piece. Wealth, how you make your money. In other words, do you love what you do? Most of the time, not all the time. How much do you make, and is that going to grow or appreciate or depreciate over time? And then it's like, where do you invest it, right? You guys are talking about crypto. Very smart, right? For the most part. Then you've got love, friends, family, intimate partner, clients, colleagues, mentors, mentees, right? It's like it ripples outward. So I remember my girlfriend asked me, like, what are you most proud of about the podcast? And I said, sweetheart, and this at the time we had 500 episodes. And I said, we have 500 episodes where every single one of them is talking about how to be a better person.
Wow.
And that's what I'm most proud of. And that's to answer your original question, Nick, is like, that's what we do at Next Level You. And yeah, we've got businesses and we've got group coaching, we've got one-on-one coaching and business and podcasts and all that. It's awesome. But at Next Level You, it's literally like, there is no one else out there who can tell you what your next level is. Only you know, and we can help you get there, because people say like, oh, do the right thing. It's like, well, who can do the right thing in the right way, for the right reason, in the right amount, at the right time, with the right people? And that was Aristotle. Aristotle was like, yo, there is no right thing. There's only a right thing for you. Stay true to thyself. And all I do with my clients, and Kevin always talks about these things, funny, because it's like, you can't sell that. This is what I say. When you work with me, I'm going to align your life and your beliefs and your habits with your highest self. And Kevin's like, that's the worst pitch I've ever heard. And it's like, I know, man, but it's true. So does that answer your question, Nick? Sorry.
No, it definitely does. And it's all about taking perspective. Like what I like is that, you know, you didn't measure your success of the podcast with money, right? You didn't mention money or
views or
views, likes, any type of metrics like that. You mentioned, you know, just stepping back and, you know, you're talking about something positive every day. Fees and I actually, we went through this. It was like the end of last year. We were like really thinking about the progress we made with our podcast. And we had to really take like a zoomed out perspective. And we thought about it. We were like, prior to doing this podcast, we weren't talking to millionaires every week. You know what I mean? Like every week we're talking to some of like the most successful people, and that energy is contagious.
Yeah.
So like the very act of us recording this podcast and talking to all these different people and networking is
change everything.
It's a win. It's a
Change
win.
everything.
It's not even necessarily about the monetary value or the metrics like Fee says. It's just you got to take that macro zoomed out approach and realize that, yo, this is what it's about. This is fulfilling.
And especially like we take, you know, you mentioned we take pride in this. I mean, we enjoy doing this, and I don't ever look at it as like work or some sort of like, oh man, I got to go record later today. Like, no, I'm like, oh wait, what does this person do again? Oh, wow. Amazon. Oh, cool. Like these are topics that I'm either interested in or I've never heard of. And I'm always interested in learning about things I don't know about.
Yeah.
So with that, you know, and we've had those dark moments too, that you talk about, like at facing adversity, where we're like, man, we can't really find like a good guest that we are like interested in. And, or we're just kind of getting into like our personal lives are getting busier than, you know, normal during certain, you know, during holiday season or whatever. And, you know, sometimes we have to take a break and to kind of reassess things. But then as soon as we came back, it was like we never left.
Yeah.
It felt like the most natural thing. Like we don't sit and prep and have these like, oh, I'm going to ask this question. You ask this question. You know, it's more so just we're having a conversation. We're learning with the audience. And with that, I think, this is why I like not having any expectations on any episode in terms of like what I can expect to get out of it. Because if I just read your bio, this conversation is not what I would expect to have. And with that, really, I want to thank you for opening up the consciousness of the hustler. You know, we often talk about business, but the mental and the social aspect of it, or the the spiritual aspect of it is more important than any kind of blueprint somebody can follow.
100%.
I appreciate you guys. And it seems to me like, you know, the hustle, the business, the strategies and stuff, just everyone remember like identity, beliefs, deeper understanding, like that's what's running us. And I can teach you business tactics, scalability, online marketing, like whatever. But like, if you don't get that core stuff right, you know, that will come back to bite you. And to me, we have it right over here. NLU guest filter, character first and integrity over everything. If you don't have that first, we will never be on our show. Number 2 is no ego. Number 3 is good for the ICA, ideal client avatar. For us, it's primarily women as well. You have to have some credibility in the marketplace, and you have to actually be an expert on something. And that's actually really that's our biggest challenge, is finding guests that have all those boxes checked. Right. And I honestly think that you two are going to have a lot of trouble finding great guests, not only because there aren't actually that many people who are as good as their Instagram bio might show, but also because there's 2 of you. Mm-hmm. And that's something Kevin and it's like, I agree, Kevin doesn't. Kevin agrees, neither do. And by the way, we're both discerning. So just mathematically, if I only want 1 out of every 100 applicants and he only wants 1 out of every 100, that's 1 in 1,000. Right. And so we're out here jeffing. Which is
well, I'll tell you what.
Go ahead, man.
You've been around the block a little longer than us, so you've experienced, you know, the good interviews, the bad ones. We're still in a stage where we're a lot less picky than maybe our boxes are a lot less at this point, because we understand that it's a grind, and to get to the place we want to get to,
Consistency.
we got to be consistent, and that's going to be certain episodes that maybe aren't as exciting as others, but there's something to take from each one of those. So like that's something that I consciously have to remind myself.
It's a challenge.
To not get too caught up in like, oh, does this person, like, can we verify their numbers? Can we verify what they're actually doing? It's like, we'll know through the conversation, and we'll figure out a way to steer it so that there's still some gems to give. So
yeah,
and you don't have to air it. If it's something incongruent, you don't have to air it. We've had a couple where it's like Kevin and I got off. We're like, we can't perpetuate that guy, right?
There's some episodes that won't make it out.
And you guys can email me saying I can't perpetuate you. No, I'm kidding.
This might go live before we end this call. I'll be honest with you.
Dude, honestly, you guys are awesome. I love it.
Alan, so you kind of touched on it early at the beginning of our episode. So I just want to circle back though. One thing we always ask our guests who come on the show is, what is your hustler mantra? Now, your hustler mantra is a quote or a phrase that you live your life or run your business based upon. So if you just want to circle back one more time, just give, let our audience know, what is your hustler mantra?
Well, like you already said on this interview, it's not just the message, it's the conversation that makes it more impactful. I think it's the emotion, I think it's the story, and I think it's not just the message, it's the messenger. And so I'm going to tell a quick hypothetical story that might trigger you guys, but I think it's important. Basically, imagine a mom in a park with a 2-year-old son, and she runs into her friend, and she puts the son down in the sandbox, and the son just recently learned how to crawl and is pretty quick. And she's talking to her friend. She's reminiscing. Open gate out of the park, goes into the road, hit by a car and killed. Hypothetical, didn't happen. Hypothetical, okay, but possible. Now, us three could argue all day semantics, like, was it the mother's fault? Was it the friends? The friend should have been paying attention, or the driver definitely should have been paying more attention. True, all true. What no one would ever argue is that it was the 2-year-old's fault. And the reason why is because the 2-year-old was not aware that cars are dangerous. And so all I have to say for my mantra is that anyone out there listening, without a question, this interview, if you've been listening intently, has raised your awareness to something. And now, in my opinion, you have a responsibility to make new choices. And that's the mantra. Not just choices in what you do, but more importantly, what you don't do. Not just who you spend time with, but who you don't spend time with. What you say, think, do, feel, and believe, what you don't think, what you don't say, what you don't do, and what you choose not to believe. Some of the beliefs are really hard to get away from, the dogmatic stuff that's just trying to keep you small. So you have a responsibility, if you're out there listening, to act on this. Don't just listen to this for fun. Don't listen to this for entertainment. If that was the case, you'd be watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Like, this is the real deal, and you have a responsibility to make positive change with it. And that's what I hope for everybody. I tell people, like, you're not going to like me maybe, but you will get value, because I'm the messenger, and I'm not going to sit here and say you're out there, you're doing awesome. Like, no, you might have to make some changes. Like I did.
Have to make some changes.
You will have to make some changes. Like, your life's 100%. Not going to improve by default. Your future is predicated on you and you alone. And Kevin and I grew up without fathers. We grew up in tremendous adversity. I got free lunch, when my stepdad left because we were so poor. So, and again, I know that I was more well off than many people. So, sure. But I do know that what I made of it is what matters to me. That's what I value about Kevin most of all, is like, not only is he unreasonably hardworking and he's character over everything, but like, he came from nothing. And that's what matters to me. What he made of it is what matters to me. And so if you're out there, whether you're doing awesome or struggle bus, like, your future is spotless and you have a responsibility to make it bright.
Damn.
That was great.
I feel like I'm about to, I just a little backstory for the audience. Before this call, I was having a little camera issues because I was spending the last 45 minutes trying to find a way to like quick patch up my roof that's leaking, because hurricane or tropical, I guess up here it's the tropical storm, hit up here this morning. So I was just like in a rut, kind of like, damn, like, why is this happening to me right now? Like, I need to be focused. I need to be like, in the right mindset for this episode. And from the minute I hopped on, it instantly made sense. Like, you're supposed to be here in this moment. You're supposed to have this conversation. This is
flow state.
It's not, not to focus on the noise right now. And the noise is the damn roof leaking. We'll get that fixed. That's not a forever problem. So, real quick, Alan, do you just want to quickly shout out your different social media handles, or where people can find you for more content?
Yeah. So if anyone resonated with this, you can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Those are the only 3 that I'm currently running. If you Google Alan Lazaros, you'll find those. ALAN, last name Lazarus, LAZAROS. I know that'll probably be in the title.
Yep.
Nextleveluniverse.com, because Next Level Universe encapsulates all of what we do. So universe, nextleveluniverse.com. And then any podcast platform, YouTube, Next Level U, Next Level University, will come right up. And we've got 700 episodes talking about holistic self-improvement. And yeah, whether it's us or you guys or whoever, just keep improving. That's it. Keep improving with the choices you make. The choices you make are what will make the difference. And if you want a better life, you have to make better choices. And, your mom could change, or your aunt could change, or your family could change, but it's not going to do much. What will change your life is your own choices.
Mm. With that, just so you're aware, Alan, we're going to make sure we post all your links, so everyone has access to that. But again, thank you for taking the time to be on this special episode, one that I feel like is going to help steer a lot of people in the right direction. But that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thanks for listening to the 99 Hustle podcast. Be sure to visit 99hustle.com to join the conversation, access to the show notes from this episode and previous episodes, and also discover some of our amazing bonus content. Please rate, review, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. Always remember, there are 99 hustles. All you got to do is choose one.
99 hustles.